Krishna's there. Actually, the wind's been so good that people have been stepping on it. So, you want to bring some chairs in with me?
Sure.
Oh my God.
So, how many?
All? No, it's not for those two. But we'll also bring this in. Holding it. Oh my God. No. They don't go together. I don't want to concern you too much, but it's not in good shape. But no, I could use some help actually. We can bring some of these chairs in for me. See, look, my help team is right.
Oh.
Yeah, these go on the sides. Once they go on the right side.
I'll bring them in.
Right.
You need any help?
I feel like.
We can put the chairs, don't worry.
Alright. We should. Sorry. We should.
The more chairs outside?
Yeah, there's more of these. Yeah, over here. Hi, Krishna. Krishna. Oh, God. Suppose we should use some more light here, huh? No, that's it. Yeah. Welcome. Is it your first time here?
No.
Fourth. Fourth. All right. Who's counting, right?
Help you with chairs?
Probably use a few more, yeah.
I don't know where. Oh, there's one. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. You can set up another row in the back here on that side.
You want to bring more of these?
Yeah.
There's my green socks. The temple floor is so cold. Oh, I know the tile.
These can go on the other side. Hey, Ian. How do you do something?
How do you go? What?
Things that the also sign they usually move. I was just thinking about that, you know. Okay. I think we got some chairs.
Yeah, we're good now. Alright, I'll change into that is cool.
Yeah.
Okay, that works.
Yeah. No, that's fine. Let's try to make it a little clearer. Take one. I think we got an extra row of chairs. This is not in here. Yeah, open the 15 minutes. Oh, there's this normally on every other day. Altar will be open 4:30 to 5:30. Days of the festival. Altar closes.
Mexican, but I think there was some program. Yeah, I came my daughter-in-law is
It's open 5:30 to 7. And then altar will be closed for the rest of the night after that tonight. Darshan schedule is a little bit different on Saturdays and Sundays.
so cute.
There'll be a shot also as well at 7:15.
But I go, I'm going to have some future. She likes
Yeah.
she takes care of
Look at that. Nice.
and he took them to San Francisco. He takes them everywhere to where he goes. And I think the girl got sick.
Yes.
She was cooking nice and I
Did the opposite. It didn't help.
it's a big, that's what I'm saying. I can't see her. Once I get sick, I get your husband, I get that's not my pneumonia, asthma, harekrishna, I'm gonna see Billion, I'm gonna give her a little shot.
I have referrals.
Yeah, I think they're gonna serve somebody sponsor something. I saw a movie myself.
Yeah, I'm not trying to delay it anymore. I basically want to finish the book back to the hell out of it. No, I don't have a phone. I think something about this on it. I had to get a referral from my general practitioner surgeon. No, I already did that. I already have the referral right from the surgeon. So now I need to actually just go. I need to make the appointment, which is the earliest I could have done that was Friday. But no, it's wrong with you, which I didn't know before. So.
I know, I'm gonna give
The surgery fixed it. So much better. And I think there's some things I've kind of noticed around this time around that are exacerbated. You can make the problem worse, like the way that yeah, I guess it could be done. already kind of procrastinated a little bit on it this time, so I wasn't sure I was really having issues yet. Now, sure, but I wish I had started finding more time where I am now. Following that, we got stuck over in New York.
That's what I'm going to see. That's what when I go.
Hare Hare Acharya Sota Satashi Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jambispada Pramamsa Prabhupada Sota Satashi Srimad Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nanda Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Jai Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Rakanath, Shri Gopala Bhatta Das Rakanath, Shri Goswami Bhagavan Ki Prem Sikalo, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shri Vasani Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Shri Radha, Gopupina, Shamakum Radhikum, Gir Govardhan Ki Pratyabhumi Vrindavan Dham Ki Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Govardhan Dham Ki Gangamai Ki Maramai Ki Bhakta Devi Ki Tulsi Maharani Ki Sri Harinam Sankirtan Yajna Ki Jirabhat Strands and the book distribution Ki This parents' anniversary, Shiva Lochan Das Thakur Ki Samaveda Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru. All glories to Shri Guru.
Thank you very much for coming to the Weekly Sunday Festival, Krishna Festival of Bhakti. So now we're going to have a guest speaker here speaking tonight. We ask everyone to kindly turn toward the seat over here. Our guest speaker is going to be Hasigrami Bloom. He's back with us, which we're very happy to say so. Everybody can recognize him by his very pleasant smile and amicable nature. Hasigrami Bloom actually joined out of UCSD with a degree in psychology, and then he served here for many years, and he's still serving here. We're glad he's back home. And he's just a very nice, soft-spoken, thoughtful devotee. So thank you, Hasigrami. Everybody give him a round of applause and wait for someone bring some cards.
If you want to put your phones on vibrate or off, this would be a good time to do that. Thank you very much.
Wait, I will put this in my phone.
to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guru Angad. What time? So, 6.
6:50.
Got my marching orders here.
We got a double header tonight. We got a nice talk by Hasigrami Prabhu, and then the kids, the children's Sunday school class will be giving a quick play after the class.
So, quickly, is anyone here not familiar with the Bhagavad Gita? Anyone not ever heard of the Bhagavad Gita, anything like that? Okay, you over there. So the Bhagavad Gita, this is one of our main spiritual books. So the Bhagavad Gita is significant for many reasons, but one of them is that this is a conversation that Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, same Krishna who's here, our author in the center, had a conversation between him and his devotee, his friend Arjuna. And this conversation on this battlefield, it is a conversation which outlines the purpose of our human form of life. It's a very important conversation. It's so important that even though this conversation was held 5,000 years ago, still we're reading this conversation, speaking about it. We've been speaking about it, practically every day. I've been here for the last 5 years, and it's spoken about everywhere across the world, at least in India, not everywhere across the world, but many places across the world. So we'll hear tonight from chapter 15 of the Bhagavad Gita. This section is entitled The Yoga of the Supreme Person. So the Supreme Person is Krishna. So this verse is pretty relatable, I'd say. So we'll be reading from chapter 15, text number 7. So before we begin this, before I read here, we say little invocational prayers to invoke the mercy of the Supreme Personality of God, Krishna. So, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Speaking from Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 15, text number 7. Ame Vanso Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana Mana Sastranjani Prakriti Sani Karshati. Srila Prabhupada's translation. Living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the 6 senses, which include the mind. Srila Prabhupada's purport. In this verse, the identity of the living being is clearly given. The living entity is the living entity is the fragmental part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, eternally. It is not that he assumes individuality in his conditional life, and in his liberated state becomes one with the Lord. He is eternally fragmented. It is clearly said, Sanatana. According to the Vedic version, the Supreme Lord manifests himself and expands himself in innumerable expansions, of which the primary expansions are called Vishnu Tattva, and the secondary expansions are called living entities. In other words, the Vishnu Tattva is the personal expansion, and the living entities are the separated expansions. By his personal expansion, he is manifested in various forms, like Lord Rama, Nrsimhadev, Vishnu Murti, and all the predominating deities in the Vaikuntha planets. The separated expansions, the living entities, are eternally servitors. The personal expansions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the individual identities of the Godhead, are always present. Similarly, the separated expansions of the living entities have their identities. As fragmental parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, living entities also have fragmental portions of his qualities, of which independence is one. Every living entity, as the individual soul, has his personal individuality and a minute form of independence. By misuse of that independence, one becomes a conditioned soul. By proper use of independence, he is always liberated. In either case, he is qualitatively eternal, as the Supreme Lord is. In his liberated state, he is free from this material condition.
and he is under the engagement of transcendental service unto the Lord. In his conditioned life, he is dominated by the material modes of nature, and he forgets the transcendental loving service of the Lord. As a result, he has to struggle very hard to maintain his existence in the material world. The living entities, not only human beings and the cats and dogs, but even greater controllers of the world, Brahma, Lord Shiva, and even Vishnu, are all parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord. They are all eternal, not temporary manifestations. The word karshati, struggling, or grappling hard, is very significant. The conditioned soul is bound up, as though shackled by iron chains. He is bound up by the false ego, and the mind is the chief agent which is driving him in this material existence.
Elder and coffee.
When the mind is in the mode of goodness, his activities are good. When the mind is in the mode of passion, his activities are troublesome. And when the mind is in the mode of ignorance, he travels in the lower species of life. It is clear, however, in this verse, that the conditioned soul is covered by the material body, with the mind and senses. And when he is liberated, its material covering perishes, but his spiritual body manifests itself in individual capacity. The following information is there in the Madhyanin Shruti. It is stated here that when a living entity gives up this material embodiment and enters into the spiritual world, he revives his spiritual body, and in his spiritual body he can see the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face. He can hear and speak to him face to face, and he can understand the Supreme Personality as he is. From the Smriti, it is also understood, Vashanti Yatra Purusha Sarve Vaikuntha Murtaya. In the spiritual planets, everyone lives in bodies featured like the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And as far as bodily construction is concerned, there is no difference between the part and parcel of the entities and the expansions of Vishnu Murti. In other words, at liberation, the living entity gets a spiritual body by the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The word Maya Vamsha, fragmental parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, are also very significant. The fragmental portion of the Supreme Lord is not like some material broken part. We've already understood in the second chapter that the spirit cannot be cut into pieces. The fragment is not materially conceived. It is not like matter, which can be cut into pieces and joined together again. That conception is not applicable here because the Sanskrit word sanatana, eternal, is used. The fragmental portion is eternal. It is also stated at the beginning of the second chapter that in each and every individual body, the fragmental portion of the Supreme Lord is present. That fragmental portion, when liberated from the bodily entanglement, revives its original spiritual body in the spiritual sky and a spiritual planet and enjoys association with the Supreme Lord. It is, however, understood here that the living entity, being the fragmental part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, is qualitatively one with the Lord, just as part and parcels of gold are also gold. I'll say a short prayer to my spiritual master here, and Srila Prabhupada. Om Jnana Tamandasya Yaranjana Shalakaya Chakshu Vritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Maha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master is opening my eyes to the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So I read the translation of this verse again. The living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the six senses, which include the mind. So one of the reasons I picked out this verse today is I found it very relatable. There's so many verses in Gita, but this one in particular is one of the ones that's very relatable to our tangible, practical experience in this world. I don't think anyone can safely say here that they aren't struggling very hard with their six senses in the mind. You know, it's a very difficult world out there. You know, people have to work so hard just to pay the rent, take care of the kids, just to live. It's quite difficult here in this world. So here Krishna, he's saying, he's agreeing with our practical experience that it's quite difficult to control. It's quite difficult to manage this body in this world. But here actually in Srila Prabhupada's purport, we are getting instructions about how to keep these six senses in the mind under control. And so this is possible by fixing the mind on something. You know, there's so many groups, they have some kind of meditation. You can meditate on a dot on the wall, or you know, you can find your special place, they have some kind of guided meditation. But our sort of meditation is a bit different. Our meditation is actually on Krishna and his instructions, and the instructions of his representative, the person who simply speaks the words of Krishna as they're given in Bhagavad Gita. So that is our meditation. That is how we control the mind and senses. So in this world we have so many choices. We can go here, go there, do this, do that, eat this, eat that. And the amount of choices, especially in this day and age of the internet, is quite bewildering. It's quite bewildering. So, actually, the spiritual master, he comes to make our choices easier. He says, this is how you should eat. This is how you should live. These are the people you should hang out with. Now, this may seem a little bit, if I can say it like that, it may seem very controlling, but I'm not a parent myself, but I think any parent can understand that naturally this is what you want to do with your kids to some extent. You want to control what kind of people they hang out with. You want to control what kind of careers or life endeavors they're pursuing. You want to make sure they eat healthy. It's not like you're like some tyrannical person, but you're actually out for their best interest. So similarly, the spiritual master and Krishna, they are looking out for our own best interest. Actually, they are in themselves. They're actually satisfied. It's like when you go to a doctor. Generally speaking, the doctor isn't sick. And the doctor, he's there to help you. So similarly, the spiritual master and Krishna, they are not in a distressed condition in one sense. They're not helping you for their own motivation. They're simply helping out of the kindness of their heart. And so this Bhagavad Gita, this whole Bhagavad Gita, all the instructions in there are actually meant, they're given out of kindness. They're given to bring us to a higher level of happiness, actually eternal happiness. So here in this verse is actually describing our position in this material world, who we are, what are we, you might say, who we are, what are we. And here it's explaining that we are the fragmental parts and parcels of the Lord, of Krishna, in Prabhupada's language. So in other words, we have the same spiritual quality of God. We have this eternal quality to us that actually stated in the Gita that for the soul there is never any birth or death. The soul exists eternally, But we are living where you have this little habitat in these bodies, these material bodies. So the body, it comes and goes, but the soul itself, it continues on after that. So why are we here in this world? Why do we have to deal with this material body? But it's stated this material body is created according to our desire. We can actually practically see that in our own life, simply in this world. We can see that someone, they may be somewhat skinny, they may have but by their activities, by their work, they can become, some kind of bodybuilder or something like that. They can change their body simply in this life. Okay, of course, there's some things you can't change, but practical experience is there that we can change our body depending on our desire. So what the Bhagavad Gita is telling us that according to our desire, we get a certain kind of body. We actually have some desire, whether in this life or a past life, to have the facilities to have this kind of body. And also, it's not simply just desire as well, but the work has to be there, the action has to be there. Just like this person who wanted to be the bodybuilder, he didn't just sit there dreaming of being a bodybuilder. He actually went to the gym, worked out, took supplements, whatever he needed to do that. So similarly, not only is the desire there, but the activity is there as well. These are the things that that give us qualification or give us the means to have these bodies. So, I've been speaking a bit about this, but the question is, who is arranging these bodies? And here we're hearing that Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is the overseer of all activities in this world. And he is arranging at the time of death, according to our desires and activities in this life, we will get a body suitable to carry out those activities in our next life. This is what elsewhere in the Gita, Krishna states this. So, actually, this whole Krishna consciousness movement, in one sense you could say, there's many different ways of summing it up, but in one sense, this Krishna consciousness movement is about deciding where we want to go in our next life. Also this life too, but where do we want to go? This life and the next life. So, what Srila Prabhupada is explaining here in this purport is that actually there is a place called Vaikuntha, or the spiritual world, which has none of the, which isn't difficult like this world. Here in this verse we're hearing that they're struggling very hard in this world. So many difficulties. And we all are trying to seek relief from these difficulties, is it not? Are we trying to, we're all trying to seek relief from these difficulties. So, this spiritual world is actually the place where we can be eternally free from these difficulties. So it's a very enticing prospect. So the Bhagavad Gita, the rules and regulations given in the Gita, they are meant to prepare for our passage to that spiritual world. It's like, I just went to India for some time. I had to do so many things to get there. I had to get a visa, I had to pack, I had to get money, so many things. So to go to the spiritual world, one also needs to make some preparation. But it's not like in India I can go, I just get some money and get a plane ticket, I can just go there. But going to the spiritual world is not quite like that. It requires a change in our consciousness. Because I mentioned earlier, our desires and our activities, this is what determines our next body. This is what determines where we go in our next life and in this life. So, Krishna consciousness is about changing our desire. So the spiritual master, he's come to give us desirous activities, new desirous activities, which we can focus towards instead of the things we were doing before. Just like the example is given, if a child, he's doing all sorts of nonsense, as children often do, they don't really know better. The parent, they can put him on time out for some time or something like that, and, some punishment, take away his ice cream or something, but they have to be given some superior engagement. They have to be given something to do, something good to do. Otherwise, they'll just get into nonsense again, So this is the whole Krishna consciousness program, is we're trying to give people so many good things to do, so many spiritual things to do, so people won't get caught up in all sorts of activities that are harmful to themselves and others. It's so many misled people and people that are pursuing a path that is not actually for their own benefit. There's so much mental disease out there, so many physical problems people have, obesity. These are all due to some misplaced desire, misplaced activity. So in Krishna consciousness, we are trying to change our activity to spiritual activity. In the Bhagavad Gita, it's explained that, as I said earlier, that one cannot give up one activity without having something superior to it. Something that is more enthusing, more engaging. So we have activities in Krishna consciousness that are very much captivating. This kirtan we have every day here. We also have every Sunday. This kirtan is meant to give us a taste of of the spiritual experience, of some you might say a good feeling, some taste of actually what is the joy of the spiritual world. It is actually meant to give us that. Is one of the purposes of it. Actually, this kirtan is also, it's a prayer. It's a prayer that actually by my own understanding, I think so many things are good for me. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do that, I'm going to be happy. But actually, when one is sufficiently learned, sufficiently well read in these literatures, he should come to the understanding that because he is a soul and not this body, that actually the activities that are meant for pleasing the soul, these are what actually is going to bring me happiness. Not the activities related to this body. Some maintenance is needed. I can't go without food. I can't go without sleep. I need these things. But ultimately, I can have all the food and the sleep I want, but I'll still be searching for more. I'll be looking for more. So this spiritual taste, this service to Krishna, this is actually what the soul is yearning for. This is what everybody's looking for. And it's described that in every relationship that we have in this world, whether it's parents or our husband and wife, or children, or our friends, there's some kind of taste there. In Sanskrit we call it rasa, some sort of feeling we get from the relationship. And we all thrive on that, actually. Everyone thrives on that. Everyone's looking for that. Everyone's looking for a very engaging relationship. But what the Bhagavad Gita and other spiritual books like Srimad Bhagavatam are saying is that actually our love, our this relationship is actually first and foremost actually meant to be with the Lord Krishna, and from there everything else will come, because as tough as the reality may be, the relationships of this world are temporary. Generally in material relationships, if not anything else, one person has to die before the other one. Just generally how things work. So there's very much pain there. There's so much pain. There's not to mention what speak of so many other things that can happen along the way. And also due to our maybe our own faults, our relationships in this world can be tinted by selfish desire. I may be your friend, but I may also be your friend for some selfish motivation. I understand, you have more money than me, or you can help me out in some way. There's some taint of selfishness there. But the nice thing about having the relationship with Krishna is, even though there may be some taint of selfishness on our end, we can understand that actually Krishna, he has nothing to gain from us. That Krishna, he is the best friend. He is nothing. Krishna's not looking for your money. He's not looking for. Please give a donation. But he's not looking for your money. He's not looking for. He's not looking for your car or your house or whatever. He doesn't need some medical treatment from you. Krishna, what he's looking for actually is for this loving relationship. He's looking that we come back to him, just like Srila Prabhupada, our spiritual master of this movement. He would give the example of the hippies, that often, sometimes I should say, the hippies, they would come from a somewhat wealthy family, well-off family, well-to-do, and then they would go off in the streets of San Francisco or something and be sleeping in the bushes. So, and the father, he's always thinking, when's my son gonna come back? When's I could take care of him. He could actually live peacefully. So similarly, this verse is describing that we're all struggling very hard here. We're struggling very hard trying to fulfill our desires, and we're not fully satisfied. And that Krishna, he's just waiting for us to come back to him. He says, come back to me. Follow my instructions. Follow this, and you will actually be eternally happy. Because with the Bhagavad Gita, these other books, Srimad Bhagavatam, are saying is that it is our constitutional position to be in tune with Krishna. It is the way we are made. We are parts and parcels of Krishna. That is how we are, you might say, designed. It is like the stomach is designed to take food. You can't change it. It's the way it is. So in a similar way, actually, we are meant to serve Krishna. But what's interesting about this is we can see, so many people aren't serving Krishna, right? We can see that, practically speaking. Many people haven't even heard of Krishna. So why is this? If we're meant to serve Krishna, why isn't everybody doing it? If that's our actual constitutional tradition, what's going on here? There's a lot of not serving Krishna out there. So it's explained that the service to Krishna, it is not like some slavery or something. It is not, Krishna's got the whip or something. That's horrible to even think that. No, but Krishna, he has given living entities free will. That living entities, they can choose to serve Krishna, or they can choose not to serve Krishna. You know, they have that choice. And Krishna, he tries to tell you that actually it's in your best interest to serve him. You know, it's not, Krishna doesn't need the service, but but when Krishna living entities are engaged in that service relationship, when living entity is serving Krishna, when Krishna is actually serving the living entity, they are both happy. They're both so like that is the greatest happiness. And when the living entity chooses not to serve Krishna, then he is in a difficult condition. You know, that he will not, no matter what he does, he will not be fully satisfied. So it's hard facts, but that is actually the case. And this whole material world, this whole world we live in, is designed to convince us of that. You know, we have our time here, and we, one way or another, we try to become convinced. Krishna's trying to convince us that that actually our position is to be in touch with God Himself. So we can see in this material world there are so many sufferings, and in times of difficulty we look for relationships, we look for help, we look for others. And really these difficulties, they're meant to bring us to the point of inquiring, you know, why am I here? What am I doing? Why am I suffering? How should I change my life? You know, how should I direct my life? And Krishna, he's just waiting for that. He's just waiting for that. And the devotees, the representatives of the spiritual master, they're coming all over the world and trying to give people with these questions, these books, to give them the answers to their questions. Why am I here? What am I supposed to do here? How do I get out of this world? How do I get out of this suffering condition? So I feel like I'm getting a little gloom and doom here, but it's not really like that. Krishna consciousness, we don't have to wait till like it's not some salvation religion. I'm not trying to fashion anybody, but it's not some religion where you get the fruit at the end. Like we're like super difficult rules and regulations in this life, and then at the end of the life you get a break. It doesn't work like that actually. The Krishna consciousness describing the key to this process is joyfully performed. You know, this is what's neat about Krishna consciousness, that we can do activities which are good, which are pure, and they're actually joyful. Now, the example that I can think of, which most people don't have an issue with, most people will not have a. There's no debate over this usually. Is prasadam, sanctified food stuff. So the idea is we cook our food as an offering to Krishna. We cook it as an offering of love for Krishna. And then when we eat that food, Krishna, he blesses the food. Krishna, he partakes of the food himself, and the food becomes Krishna-ized, as Srila Prabhupada would say. And by eating this food, our spiritual sentiments will reawaken. You know? So this is a very nice, blissful process that everyone can do. There's also kirtan, and actually, Krishna consciousness, it is a very interesting process because it is something to be experienced. It is not something that can be understood by simply book knowledge. You know, we have so many books. And one needs to be educated. But one cannot be a devotee simply reading books. One has to be practicing. One has to have the experience of Krishna consciousness. So many people in the academic world, they've studied our books. They've studied very intelligently our books. But because they haven't had association with our devotees, because they haven't really taken up the process seriously, because they haven't had this submissive attitude, they're like, hey, maybe I should try something out that these books are saying. They don't have any grasp of really what Krishna consciousness is. The example is given of a bee. He's we got a honey jar here, and he's trying to lick the outside of the jar of honey. So without actually trying Krishna consciousness out, without giving it some kind of experiment, some kind of try, then one actually will not be able to understand it. Because there's actually a special satisfaction just from speaking about Krishna, just from hearing about Krishna. Why is this? What kind of? It doesn't make, honestly to me, it doesn't make a whole lot of material sense. But Krishna means all attractive. So, speaking about Krishna, hearing about Krishna, seeing Krishna, these things are naturally, these things naturally bring happiness to the soul. So much to be said here. So one thing that's point here is that we are eternally fragmented, you might say, we're eternally separate from the Lord in one sense. That, you know, we have this body now, and actually in the spiritual world, we'll have another body. But the difference is, this body has so many issues. You know, it gets old, gets diseased, you know, gets backaches. You know, practical things we can all experience. But in the spiritual world, we have bodies, but they're fully capable of doing whatever we need, whatever we want to do to serve Krishna. You know, it's like I was just reading some stories of I was on the internet and I was reading some stories of some mothers who had some new mothers who were having some health difficulties, you know, and they were all conferring, like kind of consoling each other. And they wanted to serve their children so nicely, you know, they wanted to carry them and, you know, love them and all that. But they were having all these health problems, so they were just having so much difficulty, you know, and all of them were consoling each other, you know. So that's often the case in this material world, that we want to do good, we want to help each other, but we're very much limited in our capacity. You know, I can only do so much. But in the spiritual world, our bodies are not limited like that. We have so much facility for service. We have so much facility to help the people we love, to serve the people we love. Now, I'm speaking so much about developing love for Krishna, but also Krishna, he's never alone. It's like on the altar we have Radharani next to Krishna, you know. But Krishna, he's never alone, whether it's Radharani or one of his devotees or the cows. Krishna, he's never alone. And so along with this development of love for Krishna, one begins to appreciate all of Krishna's creation. One appreciates all of Krishna's parts and parcels. You know, specifically, as most of our conditions, we begin to appreciate the other people who are struggling in this world. The other people, especially the people who are trying to serve, who are trying to come out of this struggle. By developing our love for Krishna, by practicing this philosophy, we can really begin to develop love for each other as well. You know, on the material platform, you know, I'm thinking, oh, there's a man, there's a woman, there's an Indian, there's an American, you know, and so I'm making all these distinctions. Okay, they're there. We have some cultural differences. We have some physical differences. You know, we have so many differences. But we are all united in the fact that we are all parts and parcels of Krishna. And we are all struggling with these six senses. We are all struggling to maintain these bodies in this world. And that in each one of us, our only real happiness will be when we're serving Krishna again. So when the devotee, when the aspiring spiritualist, he begins to learn that, he can actually truly show love and compassion for other people. You know, he can give them the medicine that they need. There's a nice story Srila Prabhupada would tell that, a little bit of a sad story, but the point is there. There were two small children, and one of the children was very sick, had a very restrictive diet. And so the mom left for some time. The mom had to go get medicine or something, you know, mom had to go. And she told the boy who was well, you know, don't give the other boy any food, any like nice food, you know, don't give him any sweets or, you know, sandesh or whatever, you know. And then, so mom went. And sure enough, you know, the kid who was sick, you can imagine a little kid who's sick, you know, a little kid doesn't know what's good for him, you know. Even the adults sometimes don't know what's good for him. But the little kid, he doesn't know what's good for him. So he's begging his brother, you know, please give me some samosa, please give me some sandesh, you know. So and the brother, he's feeling compassionate, you know. He's like, oh, like my little brother, like this sick person, he's suffering so much. Let me give him some samosa, let me give him some sandesh, you know. So give him samosa, sandesh. You know, the boy enjoys it very much, you know. But then he gets even more sick. He actually almost dies, you know. And the mother comes home and is furious, you know. So this is a misplaced compassion. that everyone, we want to be compassionate, but we do not know what real compassion is. We don't know what the real medicine is for the people in general. You know, so many things I can try to do to make people happy. You know, but what this Krishna consciousness movement focuses on is trying to bring people this spiritual knowledge, this spiritual understanding. You know, because so that's what we're trying to do. So I'll leave it at that. If anyone has any questions or comments, I'll take them at this point. I think I have about 5 minutes here. Anybody? Yes.
Could you explain the ways in which we could serve Krishna?
Interesting you asked that question. So I'm going to pull up a verse here. This is actually, I'm going to read, this is an English verse. I'm going to read the English part of it. But this is actually from Srimad Bhagavatam. These instructions are given by a devotee named Prahlad Maharaj. He's instructing some of the basics of how we can serve Krishna. So generally, in this instance, there's 9 processes given for devotional service. First and foremost is hearing the name and the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then chanting His glories, we chant Hare Krishna. Remembering the Lord. Serving the Lord's feet. Worshipping the deity. Offering obeisances unto the Lord, so bowing down. Acting as the Lord's servant. Making friends with the Lord, and surrendering oneself fully to the Lord. And so, these 9 processes, they're quite broad actually. There's so many different ways one can here described as acting as the Lord's servant, or there's so many different ways in which you worship the deity here. There's so many different ways to remember the Lord. And for getting practical guidance how to do those things, behooves one to stay in the association of devotees, to regularly associate with the devotees. And one can see by their activities how one can do these in their everyday life. Also, reading these books and actually taking their instructions into practice. Anyways, I feel a little bad telling stories about myself, but I just think of when I first was reading these books back in college. I didn't have any, I didn't have any prayer beads, japamala. I didn't have pretty much any association with the devotees. But by reading Srila Prabhupada's books, I understood I should chant Hare Krishna. So I started chanting Hare Krishna. I read the mantra out of the book, you know. You know, so many devotees, they have funny stories about how they started their practice. You know? Anyways. But, you know, reading these books and actually trying to take up the practice themselves. And what's interesting about Krishna consciousness is it's stated in the Gita that Krishna, he's speaking. He's saying that to those who want to serve me with love, I give them the intelligence by which they can come to me. So, this is one of my favorite verses here. It's kind of a nice thing. So it's described that Krishna, he is situated as the super soul in everyone's heart. He's kind of like a backseat driver. Not in a bad way. I don't mean to say it like that. He's like a co-pilot. How about that? Co-pilot. You know, that's nicer. So Krishna, if we want to serve him, if we want to learn more about him, if we want to associate with the devotees, he'll, because he's God, he knows kind of the situation of this world. And he can kind of nudge us in the right direction, you know, give us some ideas, you know. Like, maybe I should go to the temple. Maybe I should go to this Bhakti Chopper group. Maybe I should read more, you know, Krishna. If we actually have that desire, he'll nudge us in the right direction. You know, this is practically experienced. And also, he'll send facility. You know, like myself, I've gotten, you know, I see devotees. They get help from Krishna actually. You know, Krishna will send them help materially and spiritually if it's good for their advancement. So I hope that answered your question. Any other? I think we're out of time here.
I'll go check.
Okay. Maybe we have 2 minutes here before they yes.
Can you explain it in just a slightly different way than fragmental part and parcel, like maybe in terms of energy or, you know, fragmental part and parcel, that's what we are. Well, how does that work with, maybe in terms of...
Okay, I'll try to explain it a little differently.
2 minutes to showtime.
Okay. So, it's described that that we're all emanations, you might say. We're all expansions of the Supreme Lord in one sense. That we are all just like Krishna. He has personality, he has name, he has form, he has activities. So similarly, we also have name, form, activities. And that Krishna, it's described that his body is Satchidananda. His body is full of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. And similarly, that is actually our position. We are eternal. In our pure position, we are full of knowledge, and we are also eternally blissful. Now, it's described that we are separated parts and parcels, which means that just like, we all have our own individual personalities. We have our own likes and dislikes. We also like all constitution like to serve Krishna, but there's different preferences in that service. There's different ways that everybody serves Krishna. It's described that, and I only have 2 minutes here, but it's described that everyone has a certain relationship with Krishna that is unique to them, and nobody else has. Just like we're all unique individuals in this world. So Krishna, there's a funny thing about this, because it's explained that we're eternal, but that also Krishna, he created, you might say, us. But this is kind of verbiage to use to kind of understand, because we're always thinking of our, we think, okay, I take birth, I die. But it's actually understood that Krishna, we're all expansions of Krishna, but also we all exist eternally with Krishna. We are not, in one sense, separate from Krishna, but we all have our own unique individual personalities and activities and our own capacities to serve Krishna. I hope I didn't confuse anyone too much. If anyone has any more questions, they're welcome to ask any of our devotees or read the books. Try to get a little more deep into this matter. All right, thank you. What? Yeah.
Could you please mention about the services in the temple to those people who are interested in doing service?
I got like 30 seconds here, but
So new people.
New people? Well, for starters, I would recommend for new people is to come in here. That's one of the most important services, because some of the things we do here they might not be so familiar with, but everyone can come to here. So we invite you to class Monday through Wednesday, 7:15. We have Krishna Lounge, kind of a younger crowd, 7:30 next door. On Saturdays we have a nice satsang program. There's Bhagavad Gita lecture, 7 o'clock. There's bhajans before 6:30. So for anyone who wants to do some service, I would recommend the first service being hearing. And then by associating with the devotees, naturally service opportunities will come up. It's like I came to the Krishna Lounge when I was new, and I would wash plates. I didn't come to the Krishna Lounge to wash plates. I came to the Krishna Lounge to have a good time, to learn spiritual knowledge, But service came with it, So what was the service? It's simply associated with the devotees, and service will come. Okay, I think I'm going to stop here before I'll wait the plate out here. We probably need to get set up. Harekrishna.
They're making their way around the back. I guess they're going to come in.
So do we need to move the Vyasa-san or what?
Oh, they're out there?
Yeah.
You just can't get in.
we just, I hope you can hear me. I'm not going to use the mic right now because I'm not there. We just finished one of our semesters when we're studying the Bhagavad Gita. So the kids like to do a little presentation, kind of like show you what we've learned. So please welcome
The new Govardhan Krishna kids have been studying the Bhagavad Gita this semester. There are many types of knowledges in the material world, but the knowledge in the Bhagavad Gita is not just any kind of knowledge. It is special. Why? Because it teaches the ultimate knowledge of the self. This knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets. It is the purest knowledge, and because it gives direct perception of the self by realization, it is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting and is joyfully performed.
What is this knowledge? Knowledge of who we are and who the Lord is. Who am I?
As the body soul continuously passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. A sober person is not bewildered by such a change.
And Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita,
Aham sarvasya prabhavo mata sarvam prarjate iti matta jante mam purava samandita.
I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me. The wise who perfectly know this engage in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts.
Lord Krishna also teaches us how to approach him and what is the result.
If one offers me with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water, I will accept it. And what is our ultimate goal? Love for Krishna, Krishna Bhakti. But those who always worship me with exclusive devotion, meditating on my transcendental form, to them I laugh and preserve what they have.
So that's the first part of our little presentation. So a couple of weeks ago, we illustrated the Raja Vidya verse with a little skit. I don't know if any of you remember it. The older kids did that. It was about the boatman and the drowning man and understanding that you need to get the true knowledge. Well, the little kids didn't want to get left out. In fact, one of my students said, "Do you know my sister, when she found out that we might not do the play, she said she freaked out." And I said, "Okay, we don't want you to freak out, so yes, we can do the play." So the little kids are going to be doing another play. And this play is The Bird in the Cage. And this one talks about understanding what the soul really needs and understanding what we need to give the soul. So, and we have Akshara in the cage, she's the bird, the soul in the body. And then we have our two others.
I have rollers of pets. Does the cage look good? Yes. Gaga. I will say, I think your bird is thirsty. No, I think your bird is thirsty. I think your bird is thirsty. No. I think the bird is cold. I'll give him a snack. I think your bird is hungry. No, I think your bird is hungry. No, I think she needs that. I think she needs some decoration. You did not think maybe a bird is thirsty. No, I think she needs some. Hungry. Think the bird is hungry. No, I think the cage needs to be you see, she needs something to eat. Yeah, to eat. Okay.
So finally, the owner of the bird realized that the bird actually needed some food. In the same way, the soul is imprisoned in this cage of a body. And we need to understand, through the knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita, by the grace of Srila Prabhupada, that what the soul really needs is not a nice house, is not elaborate food, is not jewelry and nice clothes, but the true knowledge, the Raja Vidya Raja Gita, that is in the Bhagavad Gita. So that is our presentation. Thank you very much. Oh, I should introduce everybody. Ladies, come on, sorry. So we have Govinda Priya, Vishakha, Indrani, Adhira, Madhava, Akshara, Shreya, Govardhan, Janaka. Did I miss anybody? Got everybody. So thank you, everybody.
Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you all. There's a wonderful play. Thank you very much. A very nice recital of the Bhagavad Gita. Hare Krishna. Okay, everyone, we kindly stand up. We'll have a nice, wonderful kirtan with everyone together, and after that, we'll be serving out the feast. And then just set your mats off to the side. Probably may have not. Hare